Hello there again, everybody. This is going to be a different video than what I usually do. You may recognize this person right here. I'm excited to say that I got my first ever feature match, so that was really, really cool. This is the NRG series that just took place this past Saturday, Sunday in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Um, and for people not watching it right when that happens, today is Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. So I guess it was the 21st then is when it was. But yeah, this was a really fun tournament. It was a team event. I was teaming with two buddies of mine, Raj and Vincent. Um, and we ended up doing well. We took it all the way to the semifinals. So I actually ended up with two feature matches, and both of those are going to be in this video. The first of the two was in round 4, and then obviously when we get to top 8, it's higher chance you get televised, and we did get televised a second time, so that was really, really fortunate, and I had a blast. I definitely was very nervous. I ended up breaking a rule by accident, which I immediately caught, which you'll see happen. I think I went to surveil and accidentally drew a card, and I was like, "Oop, judge." But yeah, I was pretty nervous, but also very excited. So I'm going to be doing kind of a, I guess, ad lib commentary of my own, but you'll also have some of the commentary going on in the back. Um, the commentators I didn't agree with a lot of the time, and then mainly because I think the commentators were making a few mistakes because they didn't really catch everything that I was catching while I was in the game. But I'll point it out as we go, and if there is a disagreement that that the commentators don't circle back to once they realize, I'll still try to point it out just so I can kind of display what I was thinking at the time. I don't think I made any errors. Maybe one or two things that could have been differently, but nothing egregious. And it was a lot of fun. So I won't tell you if I win or lose because again, this is a team event. So I may have lost or won either of the two matches you're about to see because, again, if my two teammates win and I lose, we still win the match. So let's do this. Let's have some fun. And sorry if there's some feedback. I made it so my audio is louder than the commentator's audio. But the computer's own audio, since I'm also listening, is kind of feeding back into the mic. It's barely noticeable, but if there's a very, very slight echo, I know that's why. All right, so let's go.
Just lots of really good results. Great
Yeah,
player.
I'm with you on not actually knowing what that event was called, but
Yeah, I'm not going to say
he was there and he did
something
very well.
every
And
5 seconds. I'm only going to say
as we
something
see
when I
here,
feel like
okay,
I
we've
have
got
something cool to
things
say.
kicked off
So
here.
I'll shut up for the
So-
most part, I think.
On the left, we got Vincent Daniels, Marty Silverberg, and Rajarshi Colaventi. And then on the right, we have the California team of Justin Porches, Ivan Espinosa, and Chris Ayali. And we're starting
Yeah.
with
So we have one of
Marty
the
and Ivan.
typical matchups here that you see where, the team of some more known players versus a team that they haven't had a chance to make their name yet. But this is a good start for a lot of these guys. Vincent Daniels, obviously,
I'm
is
trying.
a pretty known player, but I haven't heard of some of these guys before. But hopefully they get to put on a good show here. And I've been playing the deck that's really brought him to prominence here over this time span that we talked about.
All
How
right,
good he
so
is. And it looks like he's
I
gonna
guess I'll
offer
pause
a
because
trade
the
on this
commentators
card,
do
right?
give good commentary a good amount of the time. So it's probably best if I have a lot to say, I can just pause it, which I will do. So what the commentators are about to say is that it's probably not advised for me to block here because I'm essentially trading down. I think the words they use are my Ragavan is more permanent, whereas the opponent's is dashed. So I kind of lose an amount of mana advantage by blocking. But I really like the block here for a few reasons. One is I've got cantrips in my hand and I've got lots of good counter spells. So I don't want the opponent to gain a mana advantage, especially when lots of their payoffs cost lots of mana. And I want my counter spells to be good. I don't want to get double spelled because I'm typically more mana efficient than my opponent. But part of being mana efficient, part of the advantage that it grants you, in my opinion, is you need to be able to play a thing and counter a thing, and then not have the opponent be able to follow up in the exact same time. Because you don't actually gain tempo if the two things that you do are met by two things that your opponent does. Like if you go two spells and your opponent goes two spells, you haven't necessarily gotten ahead. And when the opponent's spells cost more, I'm able to cast more spells, but only if I don't let them make treasure.
Away.
Yeah, that's interesting for Marty, who has kind of the permanent Ragavan. So you're kind of trading down because Ivan's is a temporary Ragavan, but does make the exchange. But you're right, yeah, Ivan, the 4-color Yorion deck, that has really been the deck that he has had so much success with in Modern. And Marty with Isn't Murktide here, obviously a very capable deck, and potentially we can see
the opponent misses a
some
land,
Streets
so
of Nuke
obviously
dependent cards, at least
good
one.
for me.
There's the possibility of Ledger Shredder showing up in some of these lists, although not a guarantee.
Yeah, a little interesting spot here with the fetch on the stack. Ivan asked for a pause for a second because he has a couple cards that he could have played in response. It looks like he doesn't have. He does have white mana. I apologize. I think he has an Eldemir's Call in his hand that he could have fired off here with the shields down, with no counterspell being available from Marty. But I think Ivan's perfectly fine just taking this game a little bit slower. He actually doesn't want to play a faster game in this matchup, right? Like he generally wants to play a bit of a longer game.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. From Ivan's side, I mean, he has, like, one of the big things about the Murktide deck in whatever format you're playing is that it's so hard to deal with for a lot of decks. In the mirror, it's this huge creature, you just can't get rid of it. For Ivan, he's gonna have a multitude of things that can get rid of it, so he's not gonna be afraid of the late game bite at all. And yet, with Marty having a hand with a couple of counter spells, I feel like that's a good way to get to the late game where he may not want to be, so it may not be the ideal draw for him.
Yeah, I feel like what the announcer is saying here is accurate. I really don't want to have to get to the late game because the opponent does have the more powerful individual cards, but I don't really have the draw that's punishing my opponent's stumble here.
Marty, like you said, set up to play a long game here and to play well with one of those Murktides. If he gets up to 4 mana and enough cards in his graveyard, he could play a Murktide with counterspell backup one turn, and that's really where you want to be in this matchup. The thing is Ivan does have a decent bit of answers, but he's going to need possibly 2 this game to be able to do something about a giant Murktide. Things like Solitude come.
So again, missing a land drop.
You see
pretty lucky for me, or rather unlucky for the opponent.
Come down to is this, a Murktide going to be good enough in this game? Oh, it looks like no third land from Ivan.
Yeah. Well, now the focus has got to change from Marty's perspective because. I mean, you have your counter spells, but you don't want to be playing a long game now. You want to get as big as advantage as you can grab before Ivan's mana turns on.
So that's a really, really good point, Joe. And I think that's something people don't think about sometimes when they're in this situation. Their opponent misses a land drop here, which means your opponent's hand is chock full of spells. So if you play a longer game and they start drawing lands, you are at a severe disadvantage at that point because they have 7 spells in their hand. And here comes that turn that we talked about here. This looks like this might not be the biggest Murktide of all time. It's going to be pretty good. But the fact that it's going to have 2 mana left up for this counterspell here puts Marty solely in the driver's seat here.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, I feel like it's easy to get torn, and I find myself in this place a lot. If you're in this situation, your opponent has 7 cards, they miss a land drop. Do you just pass and then hope they discard the hand size? Or do you try and take over the game, which is what we're seeing Marty doing? And I think it's often the right choice, but it's kind of hard to decide, I feel like, in some spots.
I find it situational, right? Like in some matchups, like if I'm okay playing a long game, I want them
obviously
to
that has to get countered.
This one where you have something that's like very proactive, like you see with this Murktide here, and I love this bait here from Ivan. He's going to lead with Ridden 6, which he's great if this resolves, right? He does get him his 3rd land, and rightfully Marty counterspells it, but then there is the Solitude behind this that can't be counterspelled. And that's one of the situations
drawing a threat here was
Ivan kind of
the best case scenario.
Cards around his hand.
I had no pressure otherwise.
Telegraphing.
So the opponent would just probably find their land at some point and then start pulling ahead.
Marty could have maybe picked up on that, or if he just doesn't care. He's like, you know what?
So finding the threat was important.
If I can keep you from having mana, I get such advantage that it's not even going to matter anymore at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, even the worst case scenario there, which is probably what happened from Marty's perspective with the Solitude, it's still 2 cards out of Ivan's hand. So, I mean, it's tolerable. I suppose.
You don't just lose if the Murktide dies as well. You get to keep playing. You're still, at an advantage mana-wise here. But it's one of the things you have to look at your hand. Your hand has technically 3 spells left in it. You have a Bolt, which isn't super great in this matchup. A Counterspell, which is. And you have Otawara, which is like kind of a bounce spell, but it's not amazing in this matchup. And then you got this Ragavan on the top. So at least some action added to the hand here. And with a Bauble draw, it's going to add even more card velocity here for Marty.
I feel like this is a pretty clear counterspell. I did verify with a teammate just to make sure my thought wasn't insane, and they agreed that probably countering this is the best thing to do.
You're playing
I think
Protect
I
the Queen
am.
here at this point, yeah.
I think
Like it's probably
the only way I
drawing me
have left to
cards
try
when
and
it
press the
hits. At this
advantage
point, my mana is
is to
established. I've got
connect with
treasures
Ragavan, play
going, so I
cards
can
out of
cast
Ragavan's deck.
most things.
And I think you saw the exact kind of thought go through Marty's head there. You saw him kind of almost shrug counterspell there. Right? He's like, yeah, I guess I'm going to counterspell you. Is that an abundant growth off the top? If Marty wants to use his mana here?
Yeah, and I mean there are treasures. Yeah, so I think Marty's gonna get that out there. I mean he'll get a card at least.
He's gonna draw a card. I like using the treasure there. Like you can use mana. You can use this to make mana of any color, for the rest of the game. But also this lets him use his own lands a little bit better. It looks like he's gonna take a peek with the bauble here. Marty also with the Consider in his hand. But yeah, he's just going to play this a little bit slow because he's not going to be able to really add another threat to the board. He's looking for one of those big threats here, Joe. What do you think?
No, yeah, I mean, more Murktides is good. We don't like, during these team events, we don't bother really examining deck lists. We just go from match to match. So,
Don't
we know
really
the
have
exact
time for
content of
that.
his deck list. I guess I could try and pull it up here for myself.
I think that's
and relay it over.
Is that a Ledger Shredder card y'all were having a lot of fun with earlier?
It is. It is a Ledger Shredder. You are right about that.
The most expensive rare in the history of Magic, pretty much at this point. Yeah, I'm joking, but
it is. I'm sure they are. The new cards tend to be pricey. There are 2 copies of Ledger Shredder in the deck, so that is the kind of the addition to the offensive capabilities. And
Yeah,
we see it
I'm
there.
really not going to prioritize growing the Ledger Shredder at this stage. I think my actual quality of resources is much more important than just making a big flying beater that can fairly easily get removed.
And so that just makes the card so much better. The fact that, it can go back and forth. You're seeing it even getting some play in like formats like Legacy and stuff as well. It does look like an Endurance is going to come in here and sabotage this Ragavan that's been running crazy this game.
Yeah, okay, it's going to be commemorated, to stick around. And then is there mana for, let's see, Ragavan's a legend, but Auto Aura costs 4, so that would be, so we're still short.
Yeah, you need one more.
Yeah.
Now, there is a Bolt in Marty's hand to help finish off this Endurance, and you're kind of incentivized to do this, right, since you have another flying threat in play, plus this would trigger the Ledger Shredder?
That's true, and that the Endurance is going to blink again, and, I mean, losing your graveyard at this point doesn't matter too much, but yeah, okay, there it is.
But every card counts in it, right? Even if you get 1 or 2 in there at this point.
And at this point, I'm realizing that I missed a trigger. That's where my hands kind of go up. The opponent cast an Endurance and then ephemerated it. And my little hand movement was me realizing that I had forgotten. But it was a few game actions had already taken place. So it was a little bit too late to rewind.
Very good draw off the top here for Marty as well.
Yeah, Archimage Charm has a lot of potential here. So here is the Consider pre-combat. Looking for a way to put a counter on that Shredder.
I will say, drawing this counterspell at the top is actually pretty sweet here because this allows you to be really aggressive if you want to. Now you can use the Charm to draw 2 cards, activate Shredder.
Again, not really prioritizing growing the Shredder. I need cards that do stuff.
Because you don't have to sit there and just sit on your Charm as your only protection type spell.
Yeah.
And so now you're kind of cooking here because your Shredder has kind of found you more card velocity here by getting further into your deck and finding these charms and plus counters would be great. Can I even draw a land? I think you finally did.
Yeah, so a chance to get things going. Here's the Teferi, but yeah, like you're saying, Marty is now well set up. No counter for the Ledger Shredder because a land was pitched, but counterspell takes down Teferi, and I mean it's not much of an offense, but
it's going to be hopefully for Marty just enough. Well, we spoke too soon.
Yeah.
This fixes all the problems, Joe. I absolutely adore this card, but I think it might be borderline too good.
It is a strong one indeed. Now here are and there's another strong one. So actually it was not any land there. It was 3 spell choices. Marty chooses to dump Mishra's Bauble.
Yeah, put Expressive Iteration into his hands. He has a backup one. And you can exile this Murktide and be able to cast this Murktide from exile. This was probably one of the best iterations you could have had in this spot.
Yeah, this is excellent. And
so now I'm going for max size. My graveyard isn't worth much. I don't have any other Murktides coming down the pipeline anytime soon. I don't have any channelers going.
In the late game.
Let's just try to close now.
Land in play. And so this is going to be tough to keep up here.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be able to anymore. He had
especially with counterspell backup.
A couple of turns there where if he found his 3rd land and maybe started getting resolved, something it could have gotten back in this game, but once he missed for about the third turn in a row or second turn in a row, and Marty started, getting to the point where he's just sculpting his hand because he has a threat in play, that I think the game has started to slip from Ivan. And I'm not saying he can't win from here, but it's looking very, very difficult.
Yeah. All right, another Teferi. I mean, that would be great and everything. No.
And it looks like it's going to be met with another counterspell, which Marty's been able to utilize very well this game. He's kind of been having at least one left over in a lot of these spots. And Ivan at 13, he's about to take a large chunk of damage this turn. I don't know what. Let's say, can lethal be found this turn with the other?
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find lethal here. I'm just really trying to not mess up by getting blown out by something like a Solitude.
Yeah. The old Murktide Fireball play.
Yeah, so
I'm really just
Murktide
trying to not lose to like a 0.1% play. I don't think I'm slow rolling here. I try to move relatively quickly, but
that wasn't going to be enough.
I just want to be real careful.
Yeah, Marty firing on all cylinders here. All right, looks like we're going to cast the Express Generation.
Continues to not grow. There it is. It gets a counter finally. Spell Pierce will pitch for Connive. And Ivan's just waiting.
He's like, am I dead yet? Can you kill me? Can we move on to game 2? Right, this is the second Express Iteration. Is the bolt just lethal itself? It's like 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I think the bolt is just lethal itself. Plus, so does he have a? I don't think.
Yeah, and then while I'm here, might as well cast the Bauble. We'll get one card's worth of information on the opponent's library.
Instead of Murktide, the counterspell is able.
Maybe I see something spicy that I wouldn't otherwise know about.
It's so easy. Well, maybe not easy, but I'm dumb to confuse the Sulphur Falls with Abundant Growth as 2 lands when it's actually only 1.
Okay, Boomer. Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and just.
Opponent could be playing Force of Negation, so I'm just gonna main phase this.
Misery. Yep, all right, that's mine. Let's go back over here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and scoop this up and go on to game 2. Now from Ivan's side, how do you like this matchup? Do you generally like to be on the side?
I'm gonna skip through this stuff.
This is like
here's my teammate.
A little bit.
It's just
on deck. It looks like Ivan Espinosa.
All right, skipped a little bit.
Mana, which very easy thing to head back over to.
There we go.
A game where it looks like Ivan Espinosa has actually made his land drops on time.
Well, that is a key facet to his plan of actually evening up this match. And so, yeah, just to conclude that previous game, so the card that Justin did wish for was Meteor Golem, which is a 3/3 artifact creature that comes into play and blows something up. And so that takes down Ledger Shredder and clears a path for the rest of the team.
Limited All-Star Meteor Golem.
I guess.
Made its way. Yeah. But it just fills a role, right? Like, it's an artifact that you can wish for when you have a ton of mana that answers everything, because it comes into play and destroys a permanent. And then it actually just leaves behind a 3/3 body, which, yeah, that's just fine. It's just good enough, right? You just need cleanup crew at that point from the mono green deck. So it looks like Ivan Espinosa's team is up 2-1 here. 2 of the first games going to him, but he is actually down a game in his match. Since this is a team event,
I drew a subtlety here,
playing your traditional match,
which makes me confident that I can slam this Murktide, because if the opponent does the nightmare play of
that's another reason why you saw Ivan just kind of
Teferi, I have the answer to it, and then I can untap and just counter it with the counterspell that's in my hand.
You can get every single win for your team when you're playing for more than just yourself. So I definitely like just playing out that game to its actual conclusion, because sometimes I know I get frustrated when.
And then delving full value here, full graveyard here, all 5 cards instead of just tapping an additional mana. Means that the opponent has to play around Spell Pierce.
Like a 5/5 maybe.
It just makes their turn a little bit more difficult.
Very early. No counterspell able to hold it like it was in game 1.
It may have even been correct to just tap out completely, because then the opponent may be more confident in their ability to resolve a Teferi, and they may just be more likely to cast it. But the Solitude is going to be good at countering Teferi at any stage of the game. So it's not really, I think, necessary to really try to get them to play the Teferi, because the Solitude, the subtlety will be good pretty much no matter what and when. So I'm just gonna make them play around the Spell Pierce and just give them extra things to think about.
Mobile spells that don't just kill anything. It would take double bolt, I believe here, and Did I see double bolt in Ivan's hand? I only got a quick view of it, but I might be wrong on that. I want to give a shout out to all the viewers at home too. It looks like we just got over 500. Thanks for spending your Saturday with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I didn't get a look at Ivan's hand at all, so I'm not sure if there's double bolt or not. I was actually kind of interested in the idea, just the fact that Chris Ayali is here playing. Chris is a longtime LNJ player who was kind of strayed a little bit away from the game.
There's the Teferi.
He's gotten into Flesh and Blood, which you know plenty about. But
yeah, I didn't want to bring it up. I was about to say I'm used to covering this guy, but for another game.
Yeah, but by virtue of the team event, you know, there's something that can happen in team events. You know, you have two players, and you're like, hey, third friend, you used to play Magic. We need another player. Get your butt over here.
You're a boomer. We need someone for the boomer format.
Exactly. All right. So Teferi to attempt to bounce the Murktide, but
yeah, my graveyard's pretty far from another Murktide. I could have pitched either that or Charm.
Incarnation that we
I think I would prefer the Charm, especially when my opponent is about to have an Omnath turn.
But when it's good, boys,
Cavern of Souls could
put
a damper in that plan, but at least then I've got Divination.
I don't know the names of all the new Triomes, but one of the new Triomes here to kind of just round out this mana base from Ivan's 4-color deck, just giving the last one in there, so now it has all of them.
So they're bolting first to play around Spell Pierce.
So, okay, here's
so it looks like we're going to have a Fury passed up behind this as well. So he's going to go ahead and make sure he doesn't take any damage here.
That's a heavy cost to pay.
Yeah, this is one really heavy cost to pay. But I think this is something that... So Ivan's a little worried, right? That if say, like, another Murktide comes behind this or some other form of aggression, that not only is he going to take a bunch of damage this turn, then he's going to play Teferi, bounce one of the permanents, right? And then Marty's going to be like, all right, kill your Teferi, keep pressing my advantage, and then replay one of those threats again.
So now I can play the Ledger Shredder or just hold up the Charm. I'm nervous about Omnath, so I'll just hold up the Charm. Next turn I can do both.
That was a cost.
I know my opponent's last card is Teferi now.
Brennan 6, which, if it resolves, can get a land back and then lead to Teferi, which... So Marty is aware of the only card in Ivan's hand here.
He knows that there's a Teferi from on top of the deck, so he knows that if he counterspells this, there's no other follow-up play this turn. So while in this situation, Teferi might actually be a stronger threat and something he's more worried about, the fact that it can't be followed up here leads him to go ahead and just.
And then 1 mana threat was an excellent draw.
He's able to play 2 threats here this turn, so the Teferi is not going to be able to just come up, bounce 1, and have protection itself. And now you see Ledger Shredder really carrying its weight this turn.
Yeah, so these Ledger Shredders, I mean, they're not always going to grow, but just being able to filter through the deck, I mean, trading that Steam Vents out for, any card, in which this case I think it might have been an iteration, but anything you can do there is just of huge benefit. And now that Teferi does make
so clearly they didn't draw a land because they probably would have played around Spell Pierce.
Kind of buy some time here for Ivan Espinosa. For everybody at home, the new ability Connive on Ledger Shredder, it allows you to loot, right? It allows you to draw a card and discard a card. But if you discard a non-land card, then the creature grows. It puts a +1/+1 counter on that. Though with the hand and the mana base the way it is for Marty, he's pretty incentivized to keep every spell that he draws here. So you're probably not going to see the Ledger Shredder grow too often in these spots.
But 1 power is all it takes to kill a Teferi that bounces Dragon Rage Channeler. And Marty's got, okay, so Counterspell, Iteration, and Dragon Rage Channeler is the hand.
Yeah, I think you just start this turn off by, I was going to say, you can start off however you want, by attacking here or just casting Expressive Iteration. Now, as I say, it looks like he's going to go ahead and do it this way too. This gives him 3 looks at a land here if he wants as well to be able to hold up Counterspell, but it looks like Marty might take the safer route.
Still worried about Omnath. I'm far ahead. I get behind to exactly Omnath.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's hard to pass up on casting Expressive Iteration this turn.
Yeah, especially
but a land
you want, and that's the card that it's...
I have... Actually, 4 looks at it.
It's 5 looks at it.
I forgot it's got the extra.
Or sorry, Channeler 5.
So that was the Ledger Shredder.
If I hit it, it's so good. And if I don't, Omnath could be dicey.
Now we have
it was a risk.
Finally resolving, and was the third card no? It looks like no land here, so he's not gonna be able to hold
Missed
a counter spell. But I think it's gonna be just fine because he's gonna do that. He's gonna add a card to him. Ragavan went to the bottom. I didn't catch what went to the. It looks like another expressive. Joe, the expressive iterations always find the second one, apparently.
Okay, and this was the judge call, I think.
And then...
So it looks like we're going to keep going here, and this does actually find the land if he wants it here, but this is awkward.
Yeah.
What draw was that?
It's from Ledger Shredder, right? Oh, but
I think... Okay, yeah, we saw the hands go up there. So...
Yeah.
So Ledger Shredder... do not believe can trigger more than once a turn. It's not every 2 spells. It's just the second one.
Yeah, it's just the second spell this turn. So there's an extra card in the hand here. With
Yeah,
all
I'm
the-
just
all the
explaining what
cantrips this
happened, and
turn,
then
adding cards
they'll
to his
resolve
hand
it.
Plus the bauble, maybe he was resolving the. Yeah, it looks like he pointed Ragavan. He was like trying to resolve the I'm sorry, not Ragavan. The death DRC trigger, and it said the card just went to his hand. We know what the card was, but they don't down there. I don't know what kind of delay we're on. I don't know if we're allowed to help with
We're
this
not on a delay today because it's a paper event, not a online event. So,
because we know what the card was that was drawn here. It was the land.
Correct. Yeah. So if if you could radio over the coverage, could radio over to the spotter and see if that's relevant to the judges or not.
Yeah, it might not be. I know sometimes you're allowed to use this stuff to help out with certain calls, and sometimes you're not. So,
Well,
yeah. So it does look like it's going to be the quote unquote Thoughtseize fix.
Yeah.
As we call this, where the hand's going to reveal to Ivan. Ivan gets to choose the card here, and this is awkward for Ivan as well too, because if he leaves him with, land counterspell, then you can just play the land, play the counterspell. So you could take the expressive iteration here to like kind of slow the game down. I was gonna say, I think you just have to take counterspell in this spot though. Yeah.
So we know the bottom card because of
And so
iteration, so that
what
one
you're seeing
stays
here,
there.
The card that's going to be put on the bottom is because they know that card should be there. So they're going to randomize the deck, and they know the known information of the bottom card of the deck. So that's going to be staying where it was. And now I guess we're going to actually resolve the DRC trigger. Okay. So it looks like we got a full fix from the judge staff here. The card was kept on top. That's got to be a little scary if you're Ivan. And
yeah, definitely, especially because that bobble can draw it right away, or at least before Ivan gets a turn.
I don't think there was a land played here this turn, so I think Ivan might have missed yet another one here. That's right, he did miss the turn with Ren 6 was being played. He was trying to find another land to play the. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that was a mess, but we are square now, and
Joe, that was a mess, but this is the kind of turn that, I mess up all the time. Everybody messes up. What, 13 cards got seen that turn, I think?
We talked about how Ledger Shredders might get messed up without the online, tracking of the triggers. However, that's not the way we anticipated it getting messed up. We thought they would be missed, not accidentally doubled up on.
I'm a little special.
And I like the main phasing of the Solitude here. How do you feel about that? And what are you killing? Both of the cards. This is the thing about the blue-red deck, right? The non-Murktide threats are all pretty redundant, right? DRC plus Ledger Shredder just keep garnishing tons of value. Same thing with if you can get Ragavan onto a board or can attack or block. They're all just really good by themselves. And then Murktide comes down, doesn't do anything extra besides the fact that it's just a giant flying threat.
Yeah. So Ivan's making his choice.
I think he's consulting one of his teammates here. This is something you're going to see in team events, that every now and then some of these choices, especially the bigger ones, might take an extra second or two because you get to lean on your teammates a little bit, right? You've got Chris Ayala, you've got Justin here sitting next to him that are very good players, right? And so you're like, hey, I'm a little unsure here. This is why I want this one. This is why I want this one. What's your initial thought? And if their initial thought is the same as yours, you go with that one. If theirs is different, then you got to 30 seconds or so to talk it out. When you play team events, Joe, do you talk to your teammates a lot?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that much help is passed back and forth. So, I think it's more of you. It's just like if you're playing online and there's if you have a friend sitting next to you, or you're just playing on a shared screen or something, you ask for confirmation regularly. Even though you know what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
You're just like, what would you do here? Do you agree with this? Yeah, of course. There are two. You have a lightning bolt to win the game. I was just checking. And so,
I shouldn't play around anything.
Be back in 10 seconds.
So in that sense, having teammates does slow things down, and I'm not sure that you always gain from it. Sometimes you do, and when you do, it's probably significant. But 90% of the consultations are probably worthless.
Yeah, so these are my favorite kinds of tournaments. I love team tournaments. I've played in them a bunch. Generally, I'm teaming with Ross Merriam and Brendan Candy. I've teamed with you a few times. It's been great every time. I have a rule where if I'm in the dead in the middle of a game, unless I'm about to make a huge blunder, don't talk to me. Don't break up my my train of thought, because I'm gonna mess up after that. Especially Brendan. Brendan is just not allowed to talk to me while I'm playing games.
All right, so we've got iteration. I think there's Jace, Bolt, and Ragavan in hand here. So Marty is once again probably looking for a land on this iteration.
I think the Jace was the card that was put to the top and immediately left last turn, and you can kind of see why, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be really good. Like, that's another feather in the cap for Marty's deck here after sideboard in this match, because like you said, Ivan wants the game to go longer here, and he's generally favored in that. So something like Jace the Mind Sculptor out of these sideboard cards, out of these sideboard slots, is something that helps the blue-red deck keep pace late in the game. Because here's the thing, their cards aren't on the same power level as the four-color deck, pound for pound as the game goes on.
I
But when you have
agree.
a card like Jace and Expressive Iteration that see 2 or 3 cards every single time you play one of them, your cards are more castable than your opponents. You're not playing as many 4 drops, as many 5 drops, and you're not pitching to cast some of your spells. You have more 1 and 2 drops. So at that point, it's kind of like the Delver thing in Legacy, right? Where like you keep up with the bigger, more expensive decks because you're just more lean, and you're going to be seeing as many cards as they do, but you're going to be casting them more efficiently.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, I mean, if you have weaker cards, but you cast twice as many of them, you're probably coming ahead.
gonna win.
Here's the Bolt on the Solitude.
It's like the mono red decks in Standard and in like Pioneer. It's like, yeah, my cards in general are a tiny bit weaker than yours, but I'm going to cast 4 of them in the first 2 turns, or 3 of them in the first 2 turns. Yeah.
All right, here's an attack over. So Marty's other card is an Ether Gust in hand, so that's going to be uncastable for the turn, and that's something that Ether Gust could potentially do a fair amount in this matchup. He has taken that down for the turn to get the hit in with Ragavan.
Do you think it has something to do with the fact that Ivan only had 1 card left? Do you think he's just trying to press his advantage?
Yeah, making
I'm
treasure
sure
now
that
makes
would be
Jace a lot more
reasonable.
castable.
Both of Ivan's cards turn out to
Making
be
that extra mana to potentially
fairly
hold up a
decent,
counter
although
spell.
It's not really game breaking based on the board state that Marty has right now.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's a
Also,
3/3,
not
DRC
Dashing
here.
Yeah,
Monkey is
probably
pretty
has to
bad
be.
versus that Ren and 6.
There's been so many cards in and out of the graveyards, it's very hard to track.
Yeah. Chris Ayali has picked up the Legacy match with 8 cast, in actually the 8 cast mirror.
Chris Ayali winning matches of card games while I'm in the booth. So I'm getting kind of used to it.
Yeah, he is skilled at this hobby that we all partake in. All right, so Ivan picks up a land, has his Risen Reef and his Rented 6. So this Ether Gust can put either one of these cards back, and in response to the fetch land, potentially shuffle them away.
Yeah, speaking of Legacy, we got the Legacy setup here possibly. Lots of ways to get through the cards so you're never going to quote-unquote brainstorm lock yourself. For people at home that maybe don't play a lot of Legacy, Jace has the ability of drawing 3 cards, and then you put 2 cards from your hand back on top of your library. If you don't have any way to clear those cards from the top of your library and they're not good, we call that quote-unquote getting brainstorm locked, because now you have to draw those bad cards. And that's one of the worst feelings in all of Magic, where you know the top cards of your deck and you're losing and they're not going to help you. But this deck is very good at clearing the top cards of its deck.
Yeah, as we continually are seeing there, or not seeing. In that
I don't
case.
remember what I
don't know
flipped
got
over there.
But
Marty
something-
I wish I did.
perfectly set up to have his blocks from this. Yeah.
And Marty's like, yeah, these 3 cards are the iteration. None of them are in my hand. I'm not doing that again.
And
I
this
think I
is
said
that can
something
happen.
similar to
I
that.
know I've gone through problems like this when you have a bunch of cards that all do very similar things. Like, Expressive Iteration, quote unquote, draws 3 cards, but they're not actually in your hand, right? Jace draws 3 cards, they're in your hand, but then 2 of them aren't afterwards. But then when you play spells, DRC triggers, you look at the top card of your library, and then you can move it to your graveyard, and then Ledger Shredder draws a card and then lets you discard a card. All of those are very similar abilities, but different. And so when you have 3 or 4 of them in play at a time and you're triggering all of them, and you're not playing online where it tracks it all for you, it can get very messy and very difficult. And you're gonna be playing this 7 rounds today, most likely. You're gonna mess it up somewhere. It's just going to happen.
All right, 5 damage across.
So this play means I can't Aether Gust if I want to also Lightning Bolt this Ren and 6. But honestly, this Ren and 6 has kind of done its damage.
I'm not sure that's a good use of Marty's resources at this point.
Yeah, so like Ren and 6 has already dealt its damage. If they find something like a 3-mana cycle land and they're spending half of their turn at this point to draw an additional card when I've got them dead over the course of a turn and a half, I'm happy with that. So, I mean, if the opponent was another turn or 2 more healthy in their life total, then I think taking care of the Ren and 6 now, while shields are relatively down, is probably correct. But dashing the Ragavan, putting the opponent to 6 here, and then just like keeping an Aether Gust available means that I can almost for sure put my opponent to 1 on the next turn, and then they have to deal with my 2 things, assuming I do nothing else.
Yeah, I think you're just trying to stop the big spells here,
Yeah.
right? Something like Omnath resolving, and then him gaining a bunch of life, getting a bunch of extra mana. And I've been really having a problem this match with A, keeping up with the velocity of the blue-red deck, and then B, his mana's kind of gotten him, right? Like, it wasn't good in game 1. Now in game 2, his mana's good, but now he's got a little bit too much of it. Like, he's not getting the spells he needs.
Definitely qualifies.
Yeah, all right. Aether Gust, Dragon Channel triggers again. Ivan with just a land in hand. So he knows the Ragavan is there. So that's 5 damage. He's on 6.
Looks like the trigger for the DRC is going to resolve. It's going to leave the card on top. Looks like this is
So
going to
that
put on
endurance. The endurance going to the top. I think does that seal the game because there's 5 damage incoming, and then 2 attackers next turn. Endurance isn't going to stop that.
Is it better than he also has a fetch land here to kind of clear if he wants to, but yeah, I was say I don't know if this is.
Yeah, again, the turn in 6 doesn't matter.
Even fetch, yeah, he's gonna play.
Oh,
okay, there we go.
he knew.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
okay, so Ivan obviously in a better spot than us. He knows what's going on. I was right there with you. I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, I trust.
All right, so now they're gonna have 2 cards. They must deal with both of my threats through an Aether Gust.
Endurance is cleared by, and it doesn't matter. As Ivan draws land anyway, Ragavan clears the endurance.
Ta-da!
Right at that point,
So that's the first match.
Omnath would have been just a.
We end up losing next round to the team of Andrew Ellenbogen, the PT champion. I think that's the name. Well, yeah, the PT champion that was playing this. I'm pretty sure his name was Andrew. And then 2 of the other NRG SCG grinders. We end up losing to them, who also make top 8. But I will just go ahead and fast forward to the quarterfinals.
So we're getting into the match, but with the open deck list, I figured out what his hand was, so I was able to give him. Yeah. So
I've never heard that one, and that's
that one was wild.
That is insane. All right.
So this is my teammate. I'll go ahead and skip through. They start on my teammate. But when they get to sideboarding, they switch over to me, and I guess my game was interesting. They decided to stay.
On coming now. I mean,
with the deck that's done.
There we go. So that's why we're starting mid game here.
Marty and Skylar playing a deck that she deemed broken on Twitter today. That is Elementals. This is a deck that's done pretty well in this circuit, right?
Yeah, no, they've had some experience with the deck certainly, and Marty Silverberg here with Murktide. And we've seen this before, although we actually saw it with the Murktide defeating Ivan Espinosa this morning, I think. Yes. Not maybe the same 4-color deck, but the 4-color deck in practice. I mean, they share a lot of cards, even if they're not exactly themed to the same.
Yeah, this one's got a little more of a creature-centric elemental theme, and then I mean you're looking at about 60 to 75% the same-ish deck, like you said. So. Yeah. Ton of stuff together, but
Spell Pierce counters run in 6 into Fairy, neither of which will happen.
He's got a threat in play
with the 5th land from the opponent,
while also possibly leaving up mana for things like the counter spells in his hand. But this Express Generation whiffed on.
So I'm gonna say something now because it happens multiple times in the following turns. The commentators miss that my opponent has a Cavern of Souls in play, which is located right here. It's the newer Expedition printing, so I guess they didn't pick up on that. So there are going to be a few turns where they're wondering why I'm not holding up counter spells and why I'm just playing more and more creatures and being as aggressive as I'm trying to be. It's because there wasn't really another good line. So the Archmage's Charms are going to be good counter spells, good counter spells for like the Planeswalkers and stuff. But the Planeswalkers aren't super impactful. The Run-N6s don't do a lot. Without me having a monkey in play, and I don't, and even if I did, I could just dash it. And then the Teferi is obviously annoying, but as long as I have multiple creatures, which I already know I have access to, I can just keep Teferis off of the board. So I'm not really worried about holding up counter magic for the Planeswalkers. I'm just going to keep pressing in as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And then when we get to late game, I'll have some divinations.
Unless it's a Is that a fetch land? I was gonna say, I think I missed one of the cards possibly. But no, it doesn't look like it. It looks like
I
it's just
think
going to be
you're
another
right.
Dragon Rage channeler.
So any of the board is great and everything, but also having a counterspell go unused for a turn, actually multiple counterspells in hand for Marty, and
Cavern.
Skylar's deck is, I mean, going to present a lot of powerful threats here.
My friends who were
Murktide
watching
is obviously
also
impressive out
also
of
told me that
Marty's
chat
deck,
was
but
screaming Cavern, but
the
I guess the
average card in
commentators
Skylar's deck is
weren't
probably going to be stronger.
weren't
And you see
watching.
4 mana here. If this is something like an Omnath, this is going to catch them up real quick.
Yeah. And Skylar
Yeah.
also taps the
So not
Cavern
only is
to like
this
tell
gonna draw
me
a card here,
color for
they
elemental.
have a fetch land to go behind this as well to do all the things that are really good with Omnath. So, like you said, not only catch up, I mean, maybe even pull ahead this turn. Gonna gain 4 life back, possibly put some more mana into play, and keep going.
Couldn't have stopped it.
These are the turns out of the 4-color decks that are really, really scary. Or these turns where they get to kind of do the Omnath thing and go nuts.
Right. I mean, hardcast Incarnation here. Either one. I'm sorry, the Fury or Solitude. I guess Endurance would be good too. Any of the 3 would be hard for Marty to deal with going forward. And it's not like Omnath's all that easy to kill either.
Yeah, like, you know, there's lightning bolts. There's not a ton of 1-mana answers for Omnath.
So given that the opponent is on elementals as opposed to the
that aren't gonna do a whole
the
lot
just
versus
control
this card.
variant,
So, like,
where I
you're
have
in
to
a
also worry about
squeeze
things like
here,
Risen
Omnath's
Reef,
gonna
I
probably be
believe, if I
alive
remember
for a
correctly,
very,
there's
very
still
long
some
time.
number of lightning
Alright,
bolts
so it
left in the
looks like
deck.
with all the extra mana, I think they might be casting a Eldamari's Call.
Okay.
So they use the green and the white. They'd still have another green left over because I believe that's a snow-covered forest.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the pixelated lands, I don't know what they're called. Those are sweet. Those are some really sweet
All right.
basics.
So available mana here, it looks like it's going to be red, blue, green.
Yeah, so maybe you could find one of
Risen
the
Reef?
elementals. A Risen Reef would be
Yeah.
really good. Yeah, get you some value. Keep going deeper into the deck.
Could also be a just something for later in the game.
Yeah, so say you could have something in your hand that you want to play because I think there's a Quaddle in the hand, so it does look like there's an Endurance.
I feel like this was a
Actually,
misstep.
I really like Endurance here.
From
So you can play the Endurance
Skylar.
off the, like, did they
I
double
would have
green?
probably gotten
No.
a
You
Solitude.
can't. Okay, I guess if they have the green card in their hand, they can Endurance here if they want to. And
Endurance is obviously nice
kind of
too,
slowing
but
down or
not if you plan
stopping,
on evoking it, which is what happens.
Murktide. So yeah, so use the Quaddle here to play the Endurance after adding the
Okay.
Yorion to hand. Great turn for Skylar here.
Yeah. Yeah, really sets Marty's resources back. Graveyard
Love
Is it
back.
playing from
really?
Skylar.
Yeah, and the Yorion's in
We've got
hand
2
now,
Darcy's
ready
in play.
to
Just about any
deploy
spell
next
will all
turn.
but rebuild
That's,
the Delirium.
Here's some of this card advantage back that you just lost, right? You know, you've got this Oath in play. You've hopefully got this Omnath in play. And, yeah,
And
Marty,
if these Dragon Rage Channelers had flying right now, with Marty having a hand full of counterspells, Skylar's unlikely to resolve the next several threats that get presented. Maybe the Dragon Rage Channelers could actually hold their own against the Omnath. I mean,
Again,
it's
missing
but
the Cavern.
But without Delirium, there's no way.
I know
let
it's
us go
there
too
though.
soon. I think they're going to actually be able to get Delirium here. So there's going to be a sorcery, a creature, and a land in, and then they got a Mishra's Bauble. So this deck is really good at getting Delirium, but this is impressive. One expressive iteration is going to find Delirium. And then they're going to have the second. They're going to be able to find Delirium here and hold up Counterspell this turn. These are 2 huge.
Not gonna hold up
turns from these
Counterspell. There's a Cavern.
So, given that Murktide is able to reestablish Delirium already, was it a bit preemptive to ditch the Endurance, or do you think that was worthwhile and just?
I think it was very much worthwhile. Like,
Yeah.
with the size of the graveyard, a very likely play the next turn would be something like fetch up another land, possibly do something like Bobble or whatever. Be able to Murktide plus have something like Counterspell up, and that's a worst case scenario. Like, you do not want to get in a situation like that. Plus, Skylar is set up to have a pretty big turn next turn as well. So you just want to slow your opponent down as much as possible. It's like we talked about this. The Izzet deck wants to go fast. The 4-color decks in this matchup, they want to go slow, right? They want to play a longer game because, you know, you mentioned it. Their individual cards inherently are more powerful most of the time, or they need to accrue a bunch of things, right? Like you need a Quaddle in play along with all these other things when you cast your Yorion to recoup all that value. So you want the game to go a little slower if you're on Skylar's side.
All right, so 6 damage coming across from the Dragon Rage Channelers, And here's a Murktide as well.
So
So
they found another one. Wow.
yeah, this was just an impressive turn from Marty. However,
There goes
again,
Delirium, but he has the hardest one
yeah,
there.
all the counter spells in hand are now down, and we know Skylar has at least Yorion.
Cavern.
So certainly there could be a good turn coming back from Warfield's side here as well, as we
You can catch
see.
that.
Again, Teferi isn't that good
cast,
here. Like, sure, it
one of
sets
the 8 cast
Murktide
decks
back, but I
won
can
game
still
one.
kill it fairly
Rajarji,
easily.
Kovalenti over Shea Straussman, so getting it
Like, my
early
hand is
lead.
just stacked. I'll hit Delirium again, most likely.
Yeah, or Rishi, as I call him. Very good player from, I think he's from the Florida area, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if he's moved or just decided to, come up here for this event. But good on him for putting up the results as well.
Yeah, and that's a I mean, to notify to all Florida players. Yeah, I mean, why aren't you here also?
Yeah, no, right?
I mean, if your reason is because the event was basically capped, okay, that's fine. If you have any other reason, that's not acceptable.
Sure.
All right, 4 life to the good for Skylar, going back up to.
It's really hot in Florida right now too. It's definitely probably a lot more palatable where y'all are.
Yeah.
I don't know what the weather is like.
Oh,
there
it was
right
very
now, but
friggin'
I'm
hot
there.
in Florida that weekend.
Yeah.
All right, so
I
Extra
got
mana
back
from
on a
Almath is
plane
gonna
and
lead
stepped off the
to
plane and
a
immediately
Yorion
regretted
here,
getting on
and
the
one of these
plane.
Dragon Raid challenges are going to meet a prismatic end, and then end of turn, both of these cards are going to come back into play. She's gonna draw. They're going to draw a card off.
So, counterspelling the Yorion would have been the one good thing that the counters could have done. So I could have left a counter up for that, but even still, my Murktide is larger than the Yorion. So them playing the Yorion does allow them to draw 2 additional cards, which is something I didn't want to happen. So I think this is maybe the one step in the game that I could possibly regret. I now have 2 threats in play. I still have the biggest threat in play. Yorion isn't getting in, but my Murktide kind of isn't getting in either. So we're kind of stalemated now where my opponent has the Omnath in play, but I still do have just a grip full of divinations, basically. So this spot's a little bit dicey. In hindsight, I think maybe I would have gone the route of hold up counterspell for specifically Yorion. But even still, like, this isn't the worst. My opponent had 1 card in hand at this stage. It was the read was that it was mostly dead. They didn't play it with multiple turns of having mana extra. So the card in hand is effectively dead. This is kind of a draw 2 where one card is one of the 2 is a strictly better than draw 2 because it's like this Othimnissa Ponder effect. So them drawing the cards here is problematic. But again, even so, I have the biggest thing in play. My hand will still be bigger, and my hands, the cards in my hand make my hand even bigger still. So like this is kind of the nightmare scenario. But also, I think I'm still ahead here.
Omnath. But it looks like, yep, card off the Omnath now. We're going to go ahead and get the card off of the Oath. The card that was banned in Pioneer for a while.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
Good hit here, too.
Yeah, Solitude is great. I don't know that there's a white card in hand, so they might have to wait a turn.
Yikes.
But Skylar's not in danger of dying anytime soon.
Yeah, the problem is this Murktide is gonna reign supreme on this board because there's so many counter spells here, and Marty knows that there's a Solitude there, so I expect mana to be held up for the rest of the game for that kind of
Cavern.
So we'll see, because that's gonna be the important part of this game is this Murktide gonna get checked or not?
Yeah, 4 counters in hand. That probably covers the rest of the game if Marty can find a consistent source of damage, but.
I did mention they didn't see it for a while.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
Yeah, a little bit.
There's a ton of damage on the way back. So what you might see Marty slow this down just for a second.
Cavern.
Okay, we spoke wrong yet again. Here we go. He's going to go ahead and just pop right on through. It looks like we're going to have an expressive iteration.
Chat was exploding by this point. They were like, hello!
Yeah, I thought he might do this over the span of 2 turns.
Right, yeah, I gotta say, I'm a little surprised by this. So Marty is playing more aggressively than I would have expected.
He's the one in the top 8, so...
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. Certainly, once the 5th land is found, then 2 counters could be deployed, in multiple
So
turns.
I'm going to discard the counter spell that doesn't double as a
There's
divination.
some vulnerability here.
Looks like he's going to go ahead and get rid of the counterspell, leaving 3 charms in his hand here. And he did find the 5th land. Let's see what happens with the expressive iteration now. I forgot there's so much more to this spell.
Yeah.
You just resolved all the other little small things. And Expressive Iteration is a hell of a card, Joe.
It's pretty good. All these cards are pretty good. Which just, I mean, if everything's great, then comparatively nothing is. And so,
True.
I guess it still stands out. It's still the strongest card in the deck that everyone talks about as being the most important thing. So, an untapped land would allow the Dragon Age Challenger to threaten an attack at least into the Orion, but without one, hard to bluff anything there. And Skylar.
All right, so if I remember correctly,
things keep happening on both sides.
here's another point where I end up disagreeing with the commentators. You'll see soon.
Get turned on.
Yeah, they have a lot to do this turn, right? They have a fetch land that's going to gain them some of this life back. So they're back up to 21. They're over their starting life. They're going to go down to 20 when they fetch. And they can do a ton of stuff here. They have the Solitude plus a Rain and 6. They have practically infinite mana at this point as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Solitude, presumably take down Murktide, freeing up Yorion to attack if it wants to.
Yeah, I would just have been very surprised if I was in Warfield's seat and saw the counterspell get, pitched there.
Yeah.
That turn.
Cavern. I should have put a tally how many times they just missed the cavern.
All right.
So now I think they're gonna figure it out.
That's out of here.
I think.
Or Marty will gain 6 life, but a good chunk of that will just go right away and get swallowed up by the Yorion. Although maybe it stays back to defend.
Trigger the Shredder. All right, so here's the point where I think the commentators just make a mistake, and I disagree with. So, the graveyard is Mishra's Bauble, Counterspell, and Expressive Iteration. So that's 3 types. So I've drawn the card here. I'll see if I can stop at a point where my hand is more spread out.
Yeah, this is important. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So it was Iteration, land, and the 3 charms.
Here, this is important too. I think he only has 3 card types.
Okay. So I can ditch the land in order to give my channeler Delirium, which would save it from getting pinged from the Ren and 6. But 2 things. So the lands are still semi-valuable at this stage in the game because my game plan this entire time has been jam resources into the opponent such that they have to 2-for-1 themselves casting things like Solitude, so that when we get to the late game and we're at relative card parity, I can then start casting my divinations. And the 6th land means I can cast divination twice in a single turn. So the 6th land is actually maybe kind of good here. Further supported by the fact that there's a Fire Islet in play, so I can't really get flooded in a sense, especially with Darcy, especially with the Ledger Shredder. So I'm not really worried. We're not really worried about flood. I think the 6th land, at least for the turn following up and the one after that, may actually be valuable. The other much larger thing that the commentators just kind of completely miss is that giving the Darcy Delirium doesn't matter, because if I do, it has to attack, and there's a Yorion in play. The block for them is mind-numbingly easy. You just block. If I have a bolt and I bolt the Yorion, congrats. Your board is still Solitude, it's still Omnath, it's still Ren and 6. You don't have a 4/5 flyer anymore. Big whoop.
In his yard. So what he can do here is if he pitches a 4th card type, which would be land, if he wanted to, let's say he could make the channeler still just a 1/1, right?
Uh-huh.
Doesn't matter.
Channeler, he could have possibly, as I say, I think his graveyard, I think he could have pitched a land there to make his DRC a 4/4. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it can die to Yorion.
And I was thinking, actually, the Iteration maybe should be pitched because that turns on double Archmage Charm for the next turn.
Yeah, and that's
There's still a cavern.
To keep the land, right? It's he has double
charms are just
charm,
divinations.
The thing. Yeah, you can draw a bunch of extra cards here, but you're losing very.
2 mana draw 2 is better than 3 mana draw 2.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to help a little bit. You picked up an Unholy Heat.
Mm-hmm. So if you're going to, if you're going to let the Dragon Age Channeler die, or if you're not going to hold up double charm next turn, then I think you're right. I think you could have pitched the land there and kept the Iteration and saved the Channeler.
Yeah, let's see how he's going to do. He's going to start off with the Iteration here. So I found another Murktide.
It's a good place to be. Although that will, again, take down the counter magic. Skylar maybe only has one.
This is like
card
the
left
8th
at this
time they've
point,
missed
so
it.
Maybe that's okay.
I'm just gonna press, and then when we're at parity, I'll
This
just
is
draw
tricky.
2.
I know we.
I am
we have
behind,
other
so
two matches
pressing
to play,
isn't
but I
working.
think I would vote. I think.
But
I'm
the
gonna say
heat
we're
should
gonna Stay
help.
here. Watch
We
us
might
gameplay
have
out.
to.
Like I've seen,
It looks like
I've seen about
the
half of
legacy
the
match
deck
has
at this
already had
point,
3
and I
games
haven't seen
complete.
any of the heats yet. So like I
Oh,
know I'm gonna
right.
hit them. Casting the
seems
cantrips
right.
will
Let's say-
eventually find them.
I know this game has been long, but wow. So it does look like the legacy match is correct. So Skylar's teammate Shay Strausman is up 1 match for his team, but in the Pioneer seat they are still down 1. So this is a very important match for their team. Looks like Unholy Heat's going to kill the Omnath or target the Omnath.
Oh, would you look at that? It's working. Alright, so now I ditched the land because I already have the land in exile
Looks like
from
this-
iteration.
Murktide is going to come in behind here, another giant Murktide. So back to being the
Like I
biggest
mentioned, the
creature on
6th
board.
land,
It looks
probably
now
relevant. The
an
7th
Unholy
land,
Heat and a couple of charms are going to be left over behind us as well, so that'll be a pretty good spot as well. So if Marty can fade another big turn from Skylar here, they might have found themselves another spot here. I mean, drawing a bunch of cards is still really, really powerful. So
I know, that's what the plan is.
let's see exactly how many cards they want to delve out here, or exactly which cards they want to delve out here.
So it is open deck list. I know
This
the
is one of
opponent is
harder
playing
parts of
2
deck,
Unholy
actually,
Heats
is,
in
like,
their deck.
delving when your graveyard is like not
But
completely full,
I want the
and you're,
Delirium
hey,
to
do I want
stay.
to leave Delirium for stuff? You know, he does have another Unholy Heat in his hand, so he has a lot of reasons to make sure this stays this way. So what he left was Artifact, Instant.
Yeah, I need
Sorcery
Delirium so the Heat
in
can
his
stay a
yard. So if he
Heat
finds
as
something
opposed to
like
a
fetch
shock.
that he can get that done, or if he draws a land into his hand, he can ever trigger his Shredder, then he can get Delirium pretty easily that way. So we're gonna have a main phase Quaddle from Skylar
Nice,
here.
nice. So chat is talking about Cavern of Souls.
Oh,
which
hey, they caught it! No
I don't see
way!
a Cavern of Souls, but
I
if there's
do
artwork-
actually. I
Okay.
do actually. There are Cavern of Soul. There is a
Yeah.
Cavern of
I was
Souls
gonna
in
say,
play. So
if there's artwork for Cavern
Yeah.
that I don't recognize, then that would
Yep.
explain.
a lot of these plays.
Yeah, it would explain Marty not wanting to leave up counter magic if there's a
Now-
Cavern in there, even though I still don't see it. I don't know which land it is.
Right above the hollowed fountain. Below
Yeah, okay. I
the
figured
the
that's the only
triumph.
one I don't recognize. So if there
Yep.
was one, it had to be that one. Anyway,
No,
so
I
that
feel
does
bad. Marty, I'm sorry. Didn't
It's
realize there
okay.
was a Cavern of Souls in play.
make more sense.
Apology
now.
accepted.
Chat, you're always right.
No, Chad is not right because they're just making assumptions based on we shouldn't even have alternate arts. This should never even come up in the first place.
Semi
They
agree.
should all be white bordered and revised looking.
They should just have the card name printed on them in size 40 font and get rid of the artwork entirely. That would
Disagree.
be fine.
Was this an old man with bad eyesight joke? Is that what I just heard?
So
Back over
with
the
the
Murktide
cavern
Delirium.
and nothing to steal, do these charms start drawing cards at some point?
Yeah, I think maybe even do it here in the main phase, right? Like, there's a couple
Yeah,
reasons to do it.
probably.
You could trigger your Shredder, obviously, to get.
This
a
has
little
been
bit
the,
bigger and
8
possibly
turns
start
ago
to,
plan.
Get some attacks in, but also you may even want Delirium here to take care of one of these flyers. The problem is there's Euron and there's a Quaddle, so you.
Alright, so
actually
here
wanna
comes a
kill the
cute play.
Quaddle, so you don't even really need Delirium for that here.
Or
but it
the
does look
next
like he's
turn,
just
here
gonna
comes a
slow
cute play,
this just
sorry.
a little bit. And I don't mind this either. Your hand is chock full of things to do, so you don't need to actually push super hard here. Like, you can leave up counterspell for most things. We don't know what Cavern of Souls is naming. I'm assuming it's naming, elemental.
Yeah, it has to.
And
Be.
it's,
So,
so most of the creatures.
I don't
are
have
gonna be,
land in my graveyard. So if they
playable.
attempt to go
You're
down
not
with the
gonna
Renin
eliminate
6,
for
I
that
can
anyway,
sacrifice the
but you do
land
have a removal spell
and
in your
save
hand,
it.
so Skylar has a weaker
But again,
turn. He can
Yorion's
kinda
still
start
in
to
play.
pounce at the end of it. Well, speaking of good elementals, this turn will not be weak.
But now I have a
Yeah,
Heat,
Omnath
which changes the
is
equation.
The full package. I mean, it does everything. Gains life, draws cards, makes mana, is a sizable body. What else do you need?
Now this
there
one's
is-
dangerous. Because now a Darcy may
Let's see,
actually
we're
have
not
to
on
hit the
Delirium
Yorion.
Right now, I don't believe. Is it just? Is that
Here's
the
the
whole
cute play,
graveyard
though.
bauble? iteration of
so.
Unholy Heat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He can put a land into his graveyard right now, though. I
Yeah.
think that's what he's thinking about doing.
sure. Sacrificing the islet in response to the trigger. With no fetch land in play, that would leave Skylar unable to fully benefit from the Omnath. All it is still card advantage.
Yeah, what he's thinking about doing here with the card draw on the stack, he's thinking about using Unholy Heat so that Skylar can't do anything like play a fetch land after this and get all the other triggers. Yeah. Okay, sorry. All right, so what I think okay. I like this. So he's going to respond to his own Unholy Heat. So Unholy Heat is targeting Omnath. This is going to check on resolution whether you have Delirium or not. So what he's going to do is he's going to use the DRC trigger, see if he gets Delirium that way. He doesn't. So what he's going to do now is sacrifice the land. The land's going to go here. He's going to draw the card. And then Unholy Heat is going to resolve. And on resolution, it's going to see that it has Delirium.
More
Speaking of Unholy
heats.
That's another
Bring
one
the
getting added
heats.
to, Marty's
I've
hand
seen
as
like
well.
2/3 of the deck.
Very
Like
tight
they're
play
there.
board
They're in
here.
there.
Yeah,
Like
that's
I'm gonna
nice.
find them.
And this stalemate continues. This is, a lot of powerful cards being cast on both sides, but no one can even squeeze in an attack.
So it could have been made more awkward for me had the opponent used the Renin 6 to shoot the Darcy first. But then I could have made a similar play. But I probably would have used the Heat on the Yorion in that case. Which means that it's possible they may have had an Omnath stick around. So while it's not a completely obvious misplay, I think it would have been better for the opponent to induce the Heat. This only works if they have the read that I've got Heat in hand, which I think they kind of should, because again, at this point I've seen about half to 2/3 of the deck. I've still got, at that point, 3 Heats left in the deck. Odds I have one are high. Odds I'm going to find more soon are high. And I think their Yorion is worth a lot less than just like any Omnath that they find off of the top. So I think pinging with the Renin 6 to induce me sacrificing the islet is correct. Especially because the Renin 6 doesn't matter. It doesn't kill anything. It's not going to ultimate anytime soon, and definitely not over the course of this game. So, like, the Renin 6 really isn't that good. I don't even think Renin 6 is really that good in the matchup. I think it's obviously fine to keep the deck that the Renin 6 is in working. So, like, obviously, Renin 6 is great with the Omnaths. It's great at killing Monkey, but this isn't the kind of matchup where Monkey is all that relevant anyway.
Now, this Unholy Heat that's in Marty's hand might be able to help break up some of the stuff just a little bit here. I'll say, if he plays this is his second spell in the turn, right? So he could have maybe triggered his Shredder here, but didn't get a counter.
Right,
on it
I think here's
possibly
another
before he gets to another through this Yorion,
point
because you're gonna
where I
probably
disagree
have to
with
use
the
Unholy
commentators.
Heat on a Quaddle to be able to start attacking, because it does have Death Touch, so you don't want to trade one of your cards for that. This might be one of those matches where the entire match is done before game 1 of one.
All right, so I need to use the Heats on the larger things, and I think the case is still true that the card-for-card quality of the opponent's cards is still higher than mine. Like, the only reason why I think Murktide is so great at having being able to press such an advantage while having less powerful individual cards is that all of the draw-tos mean that you can play 2 less powerful cards, but 2 medium powerful cards may sometimes be better than 1 individual very powerful card. So I need to use the Heat on the bigger stuff, such that my individual creatures can start connecting. And they're gonna say that they don't really agree with me attacking all into the Ice Fang Quaddle, but like I just went over, I need to use my Heats on the bigger things, which means that this Quaddle is going to trade eventually. So, like, me not offering the trade is me conceding the fact that I'm losing entire turns worth of damage.
One of them.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, could be.
It looks like Yorion is going to be the target of Unholy Heat here.
Okay. That's reasonable. It is the biggest flyer on the board. And this is not an Eternal Witness build, so it's not going to come back. There's no danger of that.
Yeah, and you can still attack with just like your smaller creatures here too. If you don't want to trade your Murktide here, you can attack with DRC plus Shredder, or even just DRC if you want. and just offer the trade. And this looks okay. It does look like everything's going to get into the red zone here.
Yeah,
it's still a ton of damage too. If you trade
exactly, it's a ton of damage.
If you make this trade, I think
this is going to happen at some point.
Yeah, I mean, is it? I mean, because this is going to leave.
If I'm just like waiting for more removal spells to kill like a stupid 1/1 death touch.
Yeah, I mean,
like the more I wait, the more Omnaths and Solitudes my opponent will find. They have Eladamri's Call in the deck.
I mean, you are attacking for 6, and they're attacking for 3, gaining 3, but yeah, I'm not sure. I have to do the composition completely of Marty's deck.
Right.
I'm like 95% confident what I'm doing is correct.
Well, certainly drawing up one of the channel lands might alter how this game plays out as well. If Skylar can turn one of those up, although I think there's a Boseiju in play already.
Again, this Renin 6 doesn't matter. No point in attacking it.
And this will be the deciding match. It looks like Vincent Daniels, like I said, that deck can give Winota fits, and it looks like it did. That is a clean 2-0.
Like their hands got to be like lambs and Renin 6s, right? And look, it is.
But we're gonna get the full match.
Like, they're not casting spells. If I attack Renin 6, odds are they will just play another one. I need to do damage.
Joe, when you're in these spots, would you rather have had your match finished, or would you rather be the one still playing?
Oh, it's not a matter of what I want. If I'm
Again,
playing,
the read is they don't have anything. If they did like have a Solitude in response here, they've got Cavern. It doesn't matter. Now I get to start drawing too. We're at card parity, and I'm starting to pull ahead.
Nice little lightning bolts. Got to be able to finish up this Solitude.
So the plan of 9 or 10 turns ago finally happening.
I think it's another lightning bolt on top. Yeah. That one's just good enough to keep.
Okay, so that could have hit the Ice Fang.
Done pitching spells.
But again, I don't know if it's coming. I think I ended up cutting a couple bolts. I only had 3 in the deck to begin with. I think I went down to 2.
Flooded out here, so this game's looking
bolts still go face.
We'll have to see. The 4-color deck
pulling ahead.
Crazy stuff. But
yeah, and it maybe drew a lot of lands, but they also have Renin 6, so they're not going to miss a land drop. And Marty is filtering lands.
Right.
So he has 5 in play, but he's used a Fiery Islet and also thrown away several to Shredders and Dragon Rage Chandlers.
Well, look at Marty's going to play the second DRC here, trigger both of these Shredders. I'm going to help push a ton of extra damage here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, looks like one of them's going to get pitched, so this one's going to grow up a little bit.
I think we can all agree Spell Pierce is not needed.
Yep. Another land not needed. Doesn't mean he's not going to be able to hold up Charm, but I don't think he cares that much at this point.
Yeah, this is what coming across.
Could have gotten one more damage in had I flipped the
Renin 6.
the triggers, but
yeah,
kind of hard to know that.
Here. Yeah. You're setting up to lethal next turn. And it looks like game 1's going to go to Marty, and that is a huge win for his team, because his team is even with the other ones. So now they're up a game, so they only have to win one more game, while Skylar has to win 2. So huge win for the Is It Murktide deck, which I've been very impressed with today. They've been going toe to toe with these 4-color decks.
Yeah, I feel like
seems legit.
I feel like in previous events, the elemental, or I mean, the 4-color decks were handling the
I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit.
Like the being
in those.
Yeah.
Like we saw in the. I look for like shades of color wrong or whatever. So it looks like we're like looking for the picture, and it's like if it looks like something else, I might get it wrong or whatever. So it looks like we're gonna go into game 2 here. It looks like we missed a little bit.
All right, so this means a couple things already. So Chalice means Ephemerate probably no longer in the deck. Again, it's open deck lists, so I know the opponent is playing Ephemerate. This may also mean that Abundant Growths have come out. Who knows? This is also meaning that the Lightning Bolts and Unholy Heats are also a lot worse. And I know for a fact that the opponent, at least in the main deck, was playing 2 Bolts and 2 Heats.
Yeah, it's all good, all good. It looks like, is this a Chalice on
Responding.
1? I believe this is a Chalice on 1. Yeah, there we go. There's the counter.
Okay.
This is a very impactful card in this matchup, because we saw in the last game so many cards like Consider and Unholy Heat and Dragon Rage Chandler getting played.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see Ragavan, but I'm assuming it's possibly in there, though I do think sometimes they get boarded out in this matchup because of the fact that the ground's going to get gummed up so much and they just can't win.
Mm-hmm.
They can't attack. So It's gonna be pretty good, impactful versus all those cards.
I do have
but it
Spire
does look
Bluff
like,
in
I think
hand,
Marty doesn't have any more
but I'm
one-drops
really
left
trying to
over.
play the
Though we do
fetches
see
so
one
I
of those
can
Jace the
feed
Mind
into the
Flip
Murktide
card
that's
just
coming up.
always jammed in the blue card sideboards. I feel like if you're playing a blue deck in
It's
Modern
punished
right now,
if I
you just
find
have a
another
Jace
Spire
in the
Bluff,
sideboard.
but that's
And
not
I
even the end
think
of the
it's a
world
good idea.
because I also
Yeah,
have
mean,
Steam
I
Vents,
don't think
so
it's a
my
mistake.
untapped lands are going to
It
be
seems
there
like
if I need them.
a lot of the opponents, whatever you're playing, the opposition is not set up to like you're playing against isn't Murktide. You're not planning on dealing with planeswalkers, and Jace is pretty good.
And you saw how long that game went, right? In game
Yes.
one, like we were done with the other two matches. We were done with 3 games in one of them, 2 games in the other one before they finished game one. So these games go long, and it's just another piece. We keep talking about how, I felt like Izzet was behind the 4-color decks, and I kept watching it just get beat up on camera over and over again. And then more and more when I watch it now with Shredder and some of these additions, it seems like it can go toe to toe at times with these decks.
Yeah. So we'll see. Dress down in hand, but yeah, Chalice on 1 is certainly going to be an issue. Is Jace able to overcome the hurting the Chalice of the Void's putting on Marty's deck? Dress down and also in
So
hand.
Yorion was
which
not put into
is
hand, so in
basically
theory
almost
there's
a free
a
2-for-1 at
spell
some
that's
point
going to
in the
be
game.
cast here.
It's not going to affect the board most of the time, but Skylar is bound to play something that either draws a card or has an effect, an
Kills
impact.
one of Marty's cards, something
Yeah.
along those lines. Like,
Yeah, and Dress Down will just cantrip itself and then swallow up that effect, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Dress down a card that a lot of us overlooked in MH2.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I don't blame anyone for
massive.
that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a very well designed card. I think very cool and yeah, tricky to play against.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to see some Dress Downs beating Thassa's Oracles. Because Thassa's Oracle with Cavern is a little too easy. Dress Down will solve that problem.
Opponent drew Lightning Bolt here, not very good in the
haven't seen
Chalice.
that yet, but I want to now.
All right, so cycle Triome, end step for Warfield, and then, okay, pick up Yorion. Pretty solid turn, just developing for the longer game. And there's no reason that they need to play for the short game right now because Marty is completely trumped by the Chalice of the Void.
Not really.
A couple cards out of the hand.
Like it counters the one-drop creatures and like the burn spells that
But
still don't matter.
Is it time for Jace?
I think it is. I mean, Chalice on 1 is covering, unless there's a mystical dispute, which would be really
There
good
aren't.
right
I know the
now.
deck list.
I wonder if Marty's going to leave this at 3. So this does expose it to possible lightning bolts from Skylar.
All right, so I zero it here for a few reasons. Number one, Lightning Bolt and Unholy Heat don't matter. There's a Chalice in play. The one thing that can actually punish the 0 on the Brainstorm is, or the 0 Brainstorm is because it is Fury. So if the opponent casts a Fury, they can obviously kill the Jace, which would be pretty bad for me. But I know the opponent is only playing 2 Furies, and they do not have Eladamri's Call available right now, so they would have to have one of the 2 in hand. If they do use their turn in order to cast a Fury and kill the Jace, I do become behind, but then I can at least have a Murktide available to attempt to try to block and trade. That's unlikely to work, so this is definitely a risk. Fury would be very, very bad for me here, but again, there are only 2, and the upside of them not having one of the 2 Furies is so high. So I feel like it's probably about a 10 to 20% chance that they do have the Fury. If they hit that 20% chance, I'm extremely behind and probably lose. But if in the 80 or so percent chance they don't have it, I can start really pulling ahead. And in a matchup where Chalice is going to turn off a significant number of my resources, I really need to start finding the stuff that matters. So I think slamming the Jace and starting to draw cards is going to be good. Obviously, I can't really plus the Jace and expect it to be good versus Fury, because the same argument holds true. They're going to put my Jace down to 1 with the Fury entering, and then I'm going to probably just have it get attacked on the turn immediately following. So I'm still only going to get a single Brainstorm out of that line. So like They're going to hit it with the Fury. I'm going to untap. I'm not going to plus it again because it would still die to an attack. So I'm going to brainstorm it, right? So like brainstorming now means that I'm going to still get the exact same number of zeros as if the opponent does or doesn't have the Fury. But if they don't have the Fury, I get more zeros.
Yeah,
And also, brainstorm isn't even. I don't know if I would brainstorm here. I think I might have plus 2'd.
So I am a huge fan of not brainstorming with Jace. In this case, the lightning bolt argument is invalid because of the chalice. However,
Chalice, right,
Fury,
right, yeah.
But you're still right because plussing Jace could get around having Fury take it down for 4.
So again, 80%
yes,
chance I'm very, very ahead.
Trying there would
20% chance that I'm very, very behind.
Because there is a red card.
But if I
in
don't take
hand,
the
but I
risk,
do
I'm
actually
not
think it
doing
might be
anything
lightning
else. And
bolt.
again, opponent's card quality is
It
better
looks
than
like it's a
mine.
really
So not
old
playing the
card, so I think it's
Jace
just an old
has me
copy of
falling
Lightning
behind
Bolt,
more
but I
likely
could
than
just be
not.
wrong here.
Whereas playing the Jace has me pulling ahead more likely than
Thanks for
not.
catching that, Joe.
Yeah.
So then it's a question of plus or minus because I'm playing the Jace, or sorry, plus or 0.
Yeah, and also,
And I just went
what we've
over
seen,
why I
especially
went
with
to
Ledger
0 it.
Shredder, like these blue-red decks are great at drawing cards, right?
Mhm.
We don't need
Absolutely.
Jace to do draw cards. We need Jace to, be a win condition or defend us, and so that's the cavern, right?
Yeah, that is Cavern of Souls. That is
well.
the special one.
So this play kind of baffles
Irrelevant in
me.
this case is that's actually a Teferi coming down,
What the
Yeah, so
Teferi
another
does,
return
that
spell
is.
Anyway.
And well, that's gonna, so Marty's 1-drops and his counter spells.
Okay.
So this turns Lightning Bolt back
This is a
on.
pretty cool play.
This is so
But
cool.
I'm going to have a whole turn of
This is
1 mana
really good
spells.
awareness by Skylar.
Though Cavern doesn't.
I don't have
produce
many,
colored
but they don't know
mana
that.
outside of creatures. So if they have another land this turn, they can't bolt plus use, another land and take care of to put the chalice
I think
back
they
out.
just found the Abundant
Chalice
Growth.
doesn't care about Sunburst.
So they didn't make this
Oh, you're
decision
right.
knowing that they
You're
were
right.
going to have the
Yeah,
Abundant
yeah,
Growth to
I think
also
it was
resolve.
Yeah.
This was a lightning bolt. Nice
Wow.
lightning
Okay,
bolt. Wow.
that
Okay,
was,
so they've
that
2
was
for
a-
1s themselves
a
still,
very
but they
astute
were
play
up
by
on the
Skylar
mana
Warfield.
in that
Yeah,
exchange.
very
And
nice play
Marty
by her.
Silverberg, punished a little bit by
A little bit.
well, maybe even more than a little bit by not plussing the Jace there.
I still just keep the board empty and have more cards than my opponent,
It all
most of
comes
which
back to
don't
that
care
point.
about the Chalice.
Do we plus the Jace or do we zero
Right.
it there? And
Right.
like, it's
It's like,
hard to.
yeah, that was
I mean,
bad for
I'm
me.
sure if she and her
but I'm not
surroundings listened to us,
behind.
he'd just be like, yeah, of course you brainstorm. 'Cause it's the only text that's on the
No,
card.
no.
But yeah, I'm leaning towards it being a +2 there. But
I
it
could
looks
start
like
falling
we got
behind to an
a bevy
Omnath
of
if they replay
options
Chalice,
from
which
here.
they're
Now,
likely
he
to
does have a
do.
Murktide here, but not a ton of cards in his
If
graveyard.
they play the
shed. It looks
Omnath,
like
I've
his
still got
teammate really
lots of
wanted to lead off
castables.
Expressive iteration for this turn.
Yeah. So with the Chalice not redeployed yet,
It's
But
a
they've
weird
already
turn,
knowing it's
for
in
sure.
hand.
Yeah.
yeah, I think you are incentivized to pick off the Teferi now because you may not be able to in the future.
That's a really good point.
And there seems to be a
one
plethora
drop.
of removal spells in Marty's hand at the moment.
Yeah, and if he's
There's
got
a card
land,
that's
he's
great
got a pretty
against
clean
Chalice.
Turn here, we can go, Shredder into Lightning Bolt because I don't think he has another threat in his hand, and that's more what he's looking like. Besides the
Another reason why
not very
Ledger
cashable
Shredder
this
is
turn.
good.
Mhm.
It filters the
I don't
stuff
know.
that
I
isn't
think there's 5
good.
cards in the graveyard now. There is a bolt.
Yeah, I guess if you wanted to play Murktide
pretty
right now,
solid.
he could.
Oh,
Doesn't
maybe
look like he's
have
gonna
to
do
use
either one.
Otawara to do it though.
Yeah, it does look like he's gonna do either one. Yeah, he wants to. do
Yeah.
that Otawara.
So I'm saving the Otawara for a turn where I need to deal with the
So already
Chalice to
several
just
landing
like
hand,
cast
we
a
know
flurry
the
of
Chalice
things
in
all at the
there.
same time. That's the plan right now.
Think you
Like
you
I
don't
could have cast
to rush the Chalice
Murktide,
back down, but I do think you probably want to get it back.
but
down
I
sooner
think I
rather
need
than
that
later.
Otawara.
And here's a run in 6.
Go ahead and return one of these fetch lands, probably from the.
Yeah.
And this is a
Or,
punt
yeah,
from the
the
opponent.
The Rog and Triome to be able to cycle
Needed to
with.
cast Chalice
But
first.
if there's Delirium here, then this
Don't
run
know why
6
it
is
happened in this
vulnerable
order.
To being shot down.
Yep, it looks like the Chalice is about to get deployed again for 1. This will spring Marty's trap of the Unholy Heat here on the Ridden 6.
Yeah.
So maybe we could have started the turn off with the Chalice of the Void here to kind of possibly
Yeah.
avoid that. But is there a
Yeah.
Delirium there? It does
It
look like
appears
there
that
is.
there is. So yeah, that's so as good as the play was last turn. This one maybe could have gone a little differently. The Chalice one does make it back into play though, and that's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, it still shuts off what? 4 more cards, I think. 3 more cards from Marty's hand.
Shredder's
Here
gonna
comes the
filter
threats
them.
though, so this is gonna get a good start. Looks like we're gonna have Ledger Shredder, and it's gonna be followed up by a Murktide. It looks like. No more Delirium, but it's not really relevant anymore.
Yeah, but with Shredder in play, I mean, these we've seen it's not hard to get back.
Yeah, I mean these decks are like just so good at getting Delirium over and over again. Shredder just being another good threat, but another way to load up your graveyard. You know, you and I talked about this during that little break that we had. Yeah. I'm just more and more impressed with this card the more I see it.
So they're gonna make a bigger deal of this than it really is. I announced the trigger verbally, and then they say that I missed the trigger because, or the commentators say that I missed the trigger because I put the die on the Murktide to indicate that it resolved. I announced the trigger, but they're going to make a deal out of it.
Sequence. This is done out of order, and
yeah.
So this Ledger Shredder trigger would have to resolve before the Murktide Regent receives that die, but looks like an incident is not going to be made of it. And we'll just
because I said it.
That is a missable trigger. I'll admit, if it was me, if I was in Skylar's seat, I would have called a judge and said my opponent missed the trigger here.
So I thought I was going to fetch, thin their deck up just a little bit here. Hopefully get some of those good cards to the top for Skylar's sake. What's Skylar looking for to get themselves out of this?
Well, I mean, with the Cavern on the board,
starts with Omnath.
Any
probably.
elemental would be great.
I think it's got Solitude in their hand.
Solitude works. Omnath is great. Fury takes down the Ledger Shredder at least.
I haven't seen that many Furies today. I'm surprised at how little we've seen of them. So it looks like it's going to be a pass.
So playing the Shredder here in case something happens in combat, I want them both triggering. I do intend on playing the Shredder. So if I need to cast something in combat, I want the Shredder to trigger, or else it would be the second spell and not count.
I was wondering earlier if there was ever going to just be a burned bolt here.
Rewarded.
And I think there might be in this game. We'll see if the situation comes up.
Here's a Solitude, and here is the dress down. Oh no, this is huge.
And yeah, we saw Skylar, not do it on her own main phase, and here this is going to allow the chance of something like Dress Down to happen.
Yeah, so this is going to trigger the 2 Shredders, which is
probably figured that since there's a Cavern, my counter spells didn't matter.
Obviously, the biggest one is Murktide
didn't counter it.
Die, but then also this Shredder will become a 2/4.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
sorry, it'll
part.
become a 2/4, right?
Well. Yeah, because the dress down technically hasn't resolved yet, right? Like we've played dress down, we're triggering,
and this is why. So this is how the distinction is different
now
as far as actually
ditch
doing
more of the 1-mana spells.
Right.
The things have to happen in the correct order.
I'll keep another 1-mana spell just because my rest of my hand is lands.
Otherwise, they wouldn't actually happen.
Yeah, they wouldn't have an ability. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is important, even though things are overlooked sometimes. It is important to try and do things correctly whenever possible.
And I for sure need to put a counter on the
an attack coming
the attacking Ledger Shredder, or else my 1/3 would just be blocked by either 3/2. Was again no flying, no lifelink. So I for sure need to discard a spell to the attacking Shredder.
But they are still large.
Yeah, so you're not going to see a chump block from Skylar.
Right.
Here. You need to turn around and attack with this with lifelink if they want to on their turn. Back over Skylar needs to have a big turn here.
Yeah. And Marty may be close to out of things that don't get blown up by Chalice. Skylar does actually have another Chalice in hand. I think that's not going to do any good. Yorion is
would
still
maybe
there.
be good on 2,
Yorion
honestly.
On Solitude is
pretty good.
That's big time. So that would turn things right around. Now
you get an Abundant Growth in play as well. You draw an extra card here.
Yeah, if it resolves, and I don't believe there is a counter in Marty's last game. He had nothing but counters. This time, I don't think he has one.
Looks like we're going to play the Orion.
And this is going to resolve.
So this is a swing. It's a good turn.
And this game, which
my board is still
like
very
Marty
good. They're going to get rid of just probably the biggest thing.
And take down the match for his team is now
A little more up in the air.
So
yeah.
we're evenish now. I still do have an islet in play.
Abundant Growth comes in. We'll target the fetch land to save a life over the long run.
Right. It'll allow Skylar to be able to tap this for mana without having to actually go fetch a land out.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an Eldamari's Call as well
It
picked
was.
up?
Eldamari's Call, yeah. Murktide goes down. Marty will gain, I forget now, 6 or 7 life. Okay, up to 18, but yeah, the board is stabilized.
It looks like Marty's going to go digging just a little bit here. He's going to use his Fire Islet to draw another card. He's still got Expressive Iteration in his hand. I think he just drew an Aether Gust. I think is what I just saw.
Well,
Some Yorion insulation. Or sorry, Omnath. Omnath insulation.
It does get around Cavern with Omnath later, though, possibly.
Yeah, certainly.
So that could come up for sure. Does look like we're going to start off with the Expressive Iteration. Another Murktide.
This Chalice just like hasn't really affected me. So 2 Consider Zendaya, Archmage's Charm.
Well,
Chalice finally does something.
Desirable there.
Yeah, well, the other 2 just get counterspelled. So
yeah, I mean there is a Murktide in hand, so I guess casting into the Chalice puts cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, so the Charm's gonna go to hand. They're gonna put the Consider exiled, so you might see the Consider just thrown to the wolves or whatever here.
Yeah.
It's gonna trigger the Shredders as well as fuel the Murktide. Yep, Chalice trigger. What was the second spell, right? So those 2, okay, Here we go. Let's see which one they want to do first. There we go. Yep.
Bye, Monkey.
Ragavan's a pretty easy pitch here.
Yeah, I think so. That's not going to do too much with the Chalice out there. Yeah, there is an Otawara, so the Chalice could be removed at some point, but
Mystical
might be
Dispute.
saved for something more significant. And that's
Yeah,
a Mystical Dispute.
Yeah, I think that one's you can get rid of that one as well. So the Shredders are getting pretty big now. And let's see, does Marty want to add this Murktide to the board as well? This deck just doesn't quit.
No, it really doesn't. And that was either a stretch or a judge call.
Stretch.
I know I need a couple stretches right now. Man, these games have been long and grindy today.
Yeah. This is a good game though. I'm enjoying this one.
Oh yeah. I've enjoyed almost every game we've had on camera today. They've all been great. Had some absurd top decks. All right, so it looks like we're gonna call here.
Yeah.
So does Marty want to use one of the counter spells here? I believe you want to use Charm here. I think you want to actually counterspell this. You don't want Skylar going into their
Can't
turn
counter the elemental
and then
that they get.
Another Solitude.
Right. Yeah. If the Aether Gust is used, Skylar can just redraw the call, and then Marty doesn't have mana up anymore. So definitely that doesn't seem like the right choice. This is shields down, so let's see what comes up here.
A Prismatic Ending. All right, that's the answer to one of the Shredders.
Okay.
All right, that's the start of something.
Yeah. Frustrating on Skylar's side that the Solitude can't even attack through the little Shredder right now.
Yeah. He can attack through either one of these. Like you said, the body on these very relevant. You know, 1/3 into a 2/4 can actually matter quite a lot in combat in these matchups.
This may be the cycling of the. I believe the Rogan Triumph got picked up like 4 or 5 turns ago, still in hand. So yep, there it goes.
Another Cavern.
There was
a regular Cavern of Souls.
A few turns ago, with 2 other land untapped, Skylar played a shock land tapped, and I considered whether it should have been untapped just to be able to cycle then. But the life total now being at 7, I think turned out to be a good decision to hold off on that.
Yeah, it looks like this is going to exile this Shredder.
Mm-hmm.
So the larger Shredder's down.
mean, I'd love to see a game 3 here, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
I Marty's behind on the board, but I like he's got more cards and he's got this shredder that's just
Shredding.
converting over and over again.
He's still got another Murktide as well, another huge creature to have in play.
Mm-hmm.
So he picked up a bauble here. So this is the first spell of the turn.
The Bauble's getting cast to trigger this shredder.
Utawara as well, if he needs to
Whether it's the
push
first or
through
the
last
second
couple
spell,
points of
but I
damage
guess I
winter,
can
maybe
use
remove one of
the
blockers.
the Bauble
Skylar.
to get some information to
Certainly
help
if there was
influence
two-
the second
there's
spell.
only one aerial blocker for Skylar, so
Or I guess influence what's being shred.
with a Murktide or just, several more counters on the shredder, that could be enough.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you're possibly going to see get set up this turn. Is big Murktide,
Mm-hmm.
trigger the shredder.
And funny little interaction here is that the opponent does still have a fetch land in play, and I looked at the top card with Bobble. I said okay, and my buddy next to me, Raj, had a very enthusiastic okay. So the opponent kind of had the read that their top card was pretty bad, and they sacrificed the land with abundant growth on it so they could shuffle it.
Skylar's board pretty much stays
So
the same.
that was a little bit
Utawara should
awkward,
be able to
but
bounce the
unlikely to
Oriole and
matter.
attack- allow the Flyers to attack for lethal here.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like Marty's trying to make a 6/6 here. And
Again, I don't really have to worry about heat. Haven't seen any yet.
That's
There's only 2 in the
interesting.
deck, if they're in the deck, and Chalice is in play.
I mean, if it's not too taxing on the graveyard, I think you would shoot for 7 since that's Skylar's life total.
yeah, that's a good point.
But let's go for the max.
Looks like he's actually double checking that as well. Yeah, I was gonna say he agrees with you here. It looks like he's gonna go up to 7.
Yeah, the opponent does have a Solitude in play, so if they gain an amount of life, I'll want my Murktide to be pretty large.
Okay, so this time, yeah, this is resolved correctly this time. The cost for Murktide is paid. The Shredder connive happens, and then the Murktide comes into play. Perhaps irrelevant, but I'm happy to see it done.
Just as long as you're happy, Joe.
Yeah, I mean,
Just as long as you're happy.
that's my primary concern.
I would hope that's one of your primary concerns in life.
All right, we may have reached the end of the
See?
turn here,
Sacrifice.
and
Skylar's
Gotta
gonna go ahead and
peek.
fetch down to 6.
yeah, it's gonna fetch away that abundant growth land to thin the deck.
Yeah, thin this out just a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm on board with that. I know deck thinning gets plenty of hatred for like being very inconsequential and very very minor, but it is not 0. And margins are getting small here. So I am on board with this, especially with the Murktide being an 8/8. That 1 point of life probably doesn't matter.
Agreed.
It
Right,
also
well, there we go. Get the abundant growth back.
yeah, that's not good though.
Yeah, can't be played into the chalice.
Yeah. So it's Chalice, Abundant Growth, and I don't know what the other card is, but
It was a land.
I think it was another 1 drop. Honestly, it might have
if
been.
it's a blank, then Marty wins if he goes for it here on balancing the Yorion. However,
I would, but I don't
he also
know
played
that.
safe and just attack and force the Yorion to chump block.
Luckily, Tannen
I don't
tells
think that
everyone why I
either.
don't.
Would you go for it since you're at such a high
I
life
would
total, or
not.
do you like just playing safe?
I would not go for it here because if I use my Otawara on the Yorion and then my opponent casts
Or
another
Joe
Solitude,
says it.
I just destroyed
Yeah,
myself.
Solitude
True.
messes me up. Second
So I would
Solitude.
not do that.
Yeah, I think that's what they're debating right now.
Yeah.
It looks like he kind of agrees with you. I guess they could draw. I was gonna say no counterspell doesn't get them out of it here either because of the cavern.
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, I understand that there's some dead cards in hand. I would not rush it here. With Ether Gust in hand, you can beat something like Omnath on Cavern of Souls, and just I feel like the primary threat is just if you Gust, if you Otawara, and Skylar has Solitude, Marty goes from being significantly far ahead to pretty far behind.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Okay,
He
there's the
agrees with
attack
you as
and
well.
your end blocks. Yep, there's no choice there for Skylar.
Yeah, make the play you have to make to stay alive. So here comes the top deck. Looks like another prismatic ending.
Okay.
Don't think that's going to be enough.
Well, prismatic ending on Shredder would allow Solitude to attack.
Oh, that's
and
true.
Skylar can go to 9.
Okay, so a glimmer of hope.
Yep, still in it. None of Marty's
Is there anything you
cards.
can do here?
I don't think Marty can interact with that aside from Otawara bounce the Chalice and then Bolt to Solitude, I guess.
I mean, that might actually happen here.
No, I want to end step it so I can dash Monkey. Like, this puts them to 9. Monkey is lethal.
Hand as well.
It would.
Like, if I bounce it here, if I bounce the Chalice here, it just gets replayed.
This game is so close. That does look like the damage is going to get through, though. Skylar's going to go up to 9.
Which also probably means that they should have played the second Chalice in hand.
Too soon, maybe not. I guess, what do you think about, could they have possibly taken the damage and then end of turn bounce this? So the lightning bolts are freed up?
That's what's happening.
Plus the Ragavan?
If there's actual... Yeah, I suppose that could have worked too. This way, so Unholy Heat can take down Solitude here. Oh, no?
Yeah,
Wait.
I think they're just going to...
Oh, you're right. That's what happened. Okay.
Yeah, Marty's just going to, he's going to not move until it has to. Yeah.
Okay, because this prevents the abundant growth from being replayed. All right.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a really tight play, yeah. This allows you to kick the, dash the Ragavan as well.
Yeah.
And now if they can
so
get rid
now
of
there's
the
Dash Ragavan and
Murktide
there's
somehow,
Lightning Bolt.
I'm still attacking with a Monkey,
there's
and
redundancy
I can
here.
kill the Solitude before Chalice comes
Skylar
back.
should be at 9, I believe.
Bam.
This is more than 9, and that is it.
Wow.
That
What
was
a
an excellent match. So Vincent Daniels, Marty Silverberg, and Rajar.
So that is the second of my 2 feature matches. In the semifinals, we unfortunately did not get the feature, and we didn't end up losing the semifinals. I ended up getting paired. Our team ended up getting paired up against the team that went on to win the entire event, beating Andrew Ellenbogen's team in the finals. But yeah, I ended up playing against Living End, which I did actually end up winning. And then my teammates unfortunately ended up losing their matches, so we ended up having our run ends there for a very solid 3rd/4th place in, I believe, the 120 team event. So it was a really good showing. We definitely had a lot of fun. Having teammates was definitely excellent. I think like at least twice per match I received valuable input from my teammates, and some of that input did lead to game wins. Not to say that like those decisions could not have been made without teammates, but definitely having assurance and like having teammates agreeing was really comforting, and it was a lot of fun to be able to communicate with 2 guys I like. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. This was definitely obviously a little bit different than what I usually do, but it was really a really cool and unique experience to have my first feature match ever, and then actually get my second feature match ever in the exact same tournament. So overall, lots of fun, and hope you had a good time watching. I had a good time adding what little commentary I could add on top of what was already said. I think the commentators overall did a pretty nice job of covering it. And I didn't have much to add other than kind of laugh at every time Chalice was missed. I think it was 8 times, not Chalice. That first cavern that was kind of funny. But I mean, other than that, again, I think commentators did a real good job, and I enjoyed rewatching. So hope y'all have a good one, and until next time, Murktide 'em out, I suppose.